It started as a weekend hiking trip. 4 friends, Lena, Marco, Jess, and Nate, decided to explore Hollow Forest, an untouched expanse of wilderness known for its towering trees and eerie silence. The hike began smoothly, laughter and stories echoing through the trails. But as they ventured deeper, the forest began to change. The air grew colder, the sunlight dimmed, and the once clear path faded into overgrown shrubs and twisting roots. By evening, they realized they were lost. Jess suggested turning back, but Marco, ever the adventurer, insisted they push forward. They stumbled upon a strange marker, a wooden totem carved with cryptic symbols. "Who would leave this out here?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. Nate touched the totem and the forest seemed to shudder. The shadows deepened and a distant guttural cry echoed through the trees. With nightfall approaching, the group set up camp near a clearing. The forest was unnervingly quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves. As they gathered around the fire, Jess noticed something strange. The totem they had passed earlier now stood at the edge of their camp. "That's impossible," Marco said, his confidence waning. "Someone's messing with us," Nate muttered, scanning the darkness. Lena suggested ignoring it, but unease settled over the group. That night, Lena woke to faint whispers. She peeked outside her tent and froze. A figure stood among the trees, its limbs unnaturally long, its face obscured by shadow. It didn't move, but its presence was suffocating. Lena crawled back into her tent, too terrified to wake the others. The next morning, Nate was gone. His tent was undisturbed, his backpack still there, but there was no sign of him. "He wouldn't just leave," Jess said, panic rising in her voice. Marco suggested they search for him, but as they retraced their steps, they found no tracks, only the forest growing darker and denser. Hours passed and the whispers returned. This time they were louder, echoing from every direction. Then they heard Nate's voice, faint but desperate. "Help me." They followed the sound, only to find another totem, this one larger and smeared with what looked like blood. The ground beneath it was freshly disturbed, as if something or someone had been buried there. As the sun set again, the group's fear turned to dread. They decided to keep moving, hoping to find an exit, but the forest seemed alive, twisting its paths and leading them in circles. Marco carried a makeshift torch, its light casting erratic shadows. Suddenly they saw them, eyes. Dozens of glowing eyes watching from the darkness. "Run!" Marco shouted, but the forest fought back. Roots curled around their ankles. Branches tore at their clothes, and the whispers grew into a deafening roar. Lena tripped and fell, her torch rolling away. As she scrambled to her feet, she saw them, figures emerging from the shadows, their faces blank and their movements jerky, as if puppets controlled by unseen strings. Exhausted and terrified, they stumbled upon an old, decrepit cabin in a clearing. They rushed inside, slamming the door shut. The walls were covered in strange symbols, similar to those on the totems. "This place doesn't feel safe," Jess whispered, but it was their only refuge. Inside, they found a journal. The entries were erratic, written by someone who had been trapped in the forest. "The forest isn't just alive, it's hungry. It lures you in, and once you're lost, you belong to it. The totems mark its victims." Before they could process the words, the whispers returned, now inside the cabin. The group discovered a trapdoor in the cabin floor leading to a dark tunnel. Reluctantly, they descended, hoping it might lead to safety. The tunnel led to a cavern filled with totems. In the center was a grotesque altar pulsating as if alive. Symbols glowed faintly on the walls, and at the far end, they saw Nate, or what was left of him. His body was contorted, his face frozen in a scream. Above him loomed a monstrous entity, its form shifting like smoke, its many eyes glowing like embers. "It's using him," Lena whispered, horrified. The creature spoke, its voice a cacophony. "You entered my domain. One must stay. The rest may leave." The friends argued, panic consuming them. Marco, guilt-ridden for leading them there, offered himself. "I brought us here. It's my fault," he said, stepping toward the altar. The entity's many eyes fixed on him, and the cavern trembled. As Marco approached, the altar's glow intensified, and the whispers turned into agonized screams. With a blinding flash, Marco was gone. The entity retreated, and the cavern began to collapse. Lena and Jess emerged from the forest at dawn, disoriented and traumatized. No one believed their story. Hollow Forest was declared off-limits after their report, but rumors persisted. Sometimes hikers would hear whispers among the trees. Others claimed to see faint torchlight in the distance. And on the edge of the forest, a new totem appeared, its carvings eerily resembling Marco's face.